Okay, in this deck profile, this will be, this is actually an update, or maybe not an update, but this is another version, another variant of a deck list I did earlier in November, which was a Genesis Knight for yellow and pink. This one, someone had asked for a yellow and blue version. So in this deck list, I'll be going over the different cards, and then as well as this deck list actually has quite a bit of a flex slot for some of the counters, and then we'll go over at the end some of the different counter options you can use depending on how you want to build the rest of the deck. So again, we're using Knight for this one. Then our first card we have is for Vabelcion. So this is one of the SRs to discount, since we have to actually play them through discount because we are using Knight. You can put a card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and then the next card we go over is actually one of the targets that we would probably put on the bottom of our deck, because that one's a little bit harder to play than, like, say, Vabelcion. But Vabelcion is also a dragon, so you can Genesis summon into it, as well as you can also use its DR ability to essentially just get rid of a opponent's card. And then this deck does use its DR quite a bit because of Genesis summoning for Aras. But this card can also use up your DR if you need it to, as well as having 7 power is really good for clearing the board. Next we have 2 Mistwyrm Clock Tower Guardian. I believe this is the first time I've built a deck with Mistwyrm that requires me to physically play it through its discount ability, which is actually pretty hard to get without, you know, sacrificing a lot of the deck space to this card's ability. But we're actually focusing more on Genesis summoning this card because, again, it is another dragon. And then there are a few instances where we would be able to play it for its discount. For this one, the discount is you either get rid of 4 owl and or dragons cards in your grave and you remove them from play. So the main dragons we have is so far that we have is Vabelcion as well as Mistwyrm. But Mistwyrm a lot of times we'll put on the bottom of the deck with Vabelcion so we can Genesis summon it later on. But this allows us to attack multiple times, as well as giving our ruler breakthrough in case we are facing against decks that, you know, like if they try to summon like a Cheshire cat to block your attack from your ruler. Mistwyrm gives your ruler breakthrough, so you'll still be able to push through damage. Next we have, we'll actually do the 2 legends. So the first one we have is Van Rain, which both of these are also dragons too, as well as Tomega Therion. So Van Rain is just very good. Again, both of these are targets that we could Genesis summon. Van Rain you're more likely to play so that way it can get its charge shield, but if not, you can just use it as just a double attacker dragon. And then one thing to mention with Tomega Therion is that for Atlas, you could potentially use... I tried to use legends that didn't use up a counter slot, and the only other one for Atlas would be Captain Liberty. The only thing with Captain Liberty is that using his ability to special summon himself requires you to remove a lot of your counters, and all of our counters is our Genesis summoning materials, and we don't want to actually get rid of them that often. So that's the whole reason why this one uses Tomega Therion, as well as sometimes the breakthrough is actually pretty relevant, especially in this format where people are, you know, special summoning, you know, units into the defense zone, you know, when you start attacking. So having the breakthrough as well as 3 strike is pretty relevant. Next we have 4 Aras. So Aras is just a good double attacker and a defender, as well as it lets us summon warriors from our damage zone. For Mistwyrm, because it requires dragons, we're actually using the level 1s and level 0s warriors that we're using do not have a dragon type. However, there is a card from set 3 which was the Zeigar. So this one is a warrior and a dragon. I can let you destroy set cards. So it is a consideration, but it's not in this deck because the deck is not focusing that much, you know, on getting Mistwyrm out all the time. But if you want to run like 4 Mistwyrms, you may want to consider running this as one of your warriors instead of some of the other ones that we're running that we'll show later on. But again, we're just running for Aras because Aras is just a very good target for our warrior for Genesis summoning. Next we have 4 albavolts. So again, breakthrough as well as being able to heal just lets us survive a little bit longer, as again having breakthrough. So essentially it's the same as like mega therion, but it does have 1 HP more, so it's more likely to survive cards like the 5 attackers, as well as surviving Lucifer. So both can be good for that as well. For our first gen summer, this deck is running 4 archietta. So the original pink yellow one was a little tighter on counter space, so we're only running 2 of this, but this deck actually has a lot of flex spaces when it comes to counter, so using this is actually a very good option, because it allows you to use any level 0 warriors, and then again counts as like, so that we can go into level 3s, such as like Tomega Therion, as well as Aras is one of the more common ones. And then because when you gen summon with her, it lets you draw a card, as well as you get an additional summon cap, which actually is sometimes relevant in some scenarios when you want to set up like a Mistwyrm turn. So that's why we're running 4 of her. Next we're running 4 shiori, because again, shiori from set 1, still a very good gen summoner, because it lets you recur any of your familiars from your graveyard. And then you get to adjust their level, and then shiori can summon into any of the dragons or warriors. The next, or the last Genesis summoner we have is Paula. Paula's a little more different because unlike Archietta and shiori, Paula can actually use dragons as materials. So because Paula is level 1, you could use like an albavolt with a Paula to go into any of your level 4 superior rares. So like you could go into Mistwyrm or into Vabelcion. So like there are instances where you maybe shiori, go into a level 3 albavolt. Your second unit you summon for your summon cap is like Paula, and you can go into like a Vabelcion, so you can recycle that albavolt later, or if you can actually just go into another albavolt if you really need to. Other instances that you could do would be to go into, like if you go into shiori as your first gen summon, you go into an albavolt, or into an aras, and then aras will special summon a level 1 warrior, and then you can use your second summoning cap for Paula, and then to gen summon with Aras to get Mistwyrm, and then you'll have the 2 attackers, because then you'll have the warrior that Aras summoned, and then you'll have the Mistwyrm, so that we can use the ability to restand essentially your ruler is probably the main one, just because it will have 3 strike versus your other units, unless you have, if you somehow have one of the other units that have like 3 strike alive still. But Paul is very good for that, as well as we'll trigger our next card, which is our first familiar, which is Cat's in the Boot. This is actually the main familiar that you always want, either in your graveyard or you want in your hand for Paula. Because this familiar has the ability to change itself into a level 2, it means that with Archietta or Shiori, you can go into any of your level 4s, again for Mistwyrm or for Vabelcion, with using Cat Sith. It also has the ability for Giant Killer, so this is very good for decks, so like again opposing Genesis decks that use level 3s, as well as the Abyss deck, because mostly all of the units are level 3, all the big hitters are level 3s, so the Giant Killing is actually pretty relevant should we hit it on counters, as well as it can also kill like opposing Arases. The next we have 4, because we are running blue, we are running 4 A7 Duchess. So again, this is the warrior that you would probably replace with zeigar if you want to focus more on Mistwyrm, so you can get the dragons into your graveyard. But Duchess is actually just a very good card, being a warrior and then having a touchdown ability that just burns your opponent for 1, which can be very helpful. And then having 5 power is really good for clearing a lot of other units, like even other Arases it can use to get rid of those. And then we have 4 ragdoll cat sits. So again, just a generic familiar with counter that we can special summon. So because this sometimes is used as a defense, like when you counter check it, you place it in your defense zone. So again, with opposing or mirror matches. This deck runs a lot of breakthrough units, so that's why with like Mistwyrm, having the breakthrough is actually very relevant. Like if you go against other decks that use like ragdoll, cat sith. Then we have 4 legionary. So again, this is just a restander, but again, it's another target for aras because it's a warrior, and then it's one of those things will let us, you know, free up our energy as well, or our resources, and so we can do other things later on. Then next we have 4 wall of shields. So this is just for defense, because sometimes our middle slot might be a little empty. So just being able to reduce like the 3 attack strikers is very good for making sure that we stay alive long enough. And the last card we have is 4 absolute zero fields. This is from the original starter deck from set 1, where you can just, whenever you get directly attacked, you can play it to reduce the damage to 0. This is actually the biggest flex slot inside of the deck, meaning that there's a lot of options that we'll go over in a little bit that can actually replace this. Because a lot of times the deck wants to be a little bit more aggressive, summoning a lot of the different higher dragons and stuff, and then because of things like albavolt, where we can heal out, or even aras to like reduce, to essentially pull things out of our damage zone, we're essentially healing them. So we don't necessarily need to prevent as much, especially because we do have like wall of shields as another option, since the counter ability doesn't do much, where it just puts itself into the graveyard. So these 4 cards could be any of the other cards that we are going to go over now. So the first one that I've tried earlier, when I was thinking about Mistwyrm. So again, because we need dragons in our graveyard to remove to play for its discount. This is when the deck would run, like, if you want to run 4 Mistwyrms, you could replace Duchess with Zeigar, as well as you can replace the absolute zero field with 4 umbralus, because it is a dragon as well. It has the ability to restand one of your resources if you damage check it, which is not bad, since this deck tends to tap out a lot for its resources, just to be able to play all of its Genesis summoning targets, or even to do the different abilities. But it is a dragon. The only thing is that with this card, sometimes it gets really clunky when it ends up like in your hand. So sometimes you'll use like Paula to like discard it. You could even use this to Genesis summon with Paula, because again, Paula can Genesis summon with dragons to go into a level 3, and it lets you shuffle it back into the deck. But even then, that felt pretty clunky. Where like if I'm spending 2 resources, I would rather be summoning like a Shiori or a Archietta. So this is an option if you want to go more Mistwyrms. Like if you want to cut Vabelcion and go for Mistwyrms, you could probably run umbralus instead of like the absolute zero field. Another option you could use is Embrace of Aeons, because again, Embrace of Aeons is a very good card. And again, because of its DR ability, you could even use it to put like Mistwyrms that get stuck in your hand onto the bottom of your deck. So again, if you don't want to change any of like the dragons in the deck, like you don't want to add Zeigar, the one that destroys sets, instead of like Duchess, you could use like Embrace of Aeons. You could even do like 2 and 2, like do 2 absolute zero fields and then 2 Embrace of Aeons. But again, sometimes we are tapping out in this deck, so sometimes leaving up 1 energy is very hard, and even if we end up using it, it means that the next turn we only have 2 energy, unless we have like a legionary to untap our energy. So sometimes because we do have a lot of level 3s and higher, we want to keep our energy open. So that's why sometimes this card may not be that good. So I wouldn't suggest running this in like high numbers of like say 4, but maybe like 2, even maybe 3 might be fine. The last option that I had that is possible is Black Cat Sith. So because the deck could potentially DR a lot, using like Vabelcion or like with Aris, Black Cat Sith has when it's countered, you can heal and then deal 2 damage stuff. So you don't actually like heal. Whatever damage you're taking, if you counter check it, you're taking that exact damage, but you get to swap out your damage, so you can like turn your cards face down cards into damage that can be used for DR. As well as it's also a familiar, so it can be used with like Shiori or Archietta to get back. So this is another option that you could use. It's also an owl. So again, for Mistwyrm can also remove owls as well as dragons. So sometimes having this in your graveyard might be a fine target to remove to meet that requirement if you want to go more Mistwyrms. as well. But again, sometimes just healing out your cards, getting out, like try to hit more warriors into it for like Aras, or again just getting more DRs. So this could be an option instead of again like absolute zero field. But that is all for this deck list, or for this deck profile. The deck list is in the description below. And again, if there are other types, like if there are older decks that I've done, but you want to see like different twists on it, or if there are more specific like deck types you want to see, I've pretty much covered like quite a bit of the decks that I wanted to make. There's still like a few, but you know, with set 4 coming within hopefully the next couple months, it might get pushed back. We recently got the announcement for set 4, and with the turn with Archietta from the original creator of the game coming back to it. So there's a chance it was originally supposed to be at the end of January, but it may get pushed back to hopefully like February at the most. But I'll be looking forward to that, because then again with set 3, the card pool for deck options got so huge that I can't imagine like how much deck choices you would be able to open up with the coming of set 4. But with that, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.